Please remember to use proper citations if you use information from web search results in your response. Follow the citation instructions carefully and use tags as required. The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's sky without warning. It hovered over Seoul, casting a shadow that stretched for miles. People stood frozen in the streets, staring up at the metallic vessel that shimmered in the morning light. Dr. Ji-woo Park clutched her tablet tightly as she waited with the hastily assembled welcome committee. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had prepared for this moment her entire career, but nothing could truly prepare humanity for first contact. "They're coming down," whispered Taiho beside her. The retired general had been called back to service when the ship appeared. His weathered face remained calm, but his eyes tracked every movement. A beam of light shot down from the ship, and 5 tall figures materialized on the landing pad. Ji-woo gasped. The aliens stood nearly 8 feet tall with bodies covered in natural armor plates. Their forearms ended in clawed hands, and their eyes, 3 of them, blinked independently as they surveyed the humans. "I am Ambassador Doll of the Varan Collective," the lead alien announced through a device on his chest. His voice sounded metallic but clear. "We have come to meet the dominant species of this world." Ji-woo stepped forward with the Earth delegation leader. "Welcome to Earth. We are honored by your visit and look forward to peaceful exchange between our peoples." The alien's mouth parts shifted in what might have been a smile, but his eyes showed no warmth. He looked down at Ji-woo as one might regard an insect. "Fascinating," Doll said, not to the humans but to his companions. "Such small, fragile creatures, no natural defenses at all." The humans exchanged uncomfortable glances, but maintained diplomatic composure as they led the Varans to the conference center prepared for this historic meeting. Inside, world leaders joined virtually on large screens. The aliens seemed unimpressed by the technology, which Ji-woo noted was probably centuries behind their own. "We have observed your world for some time," Doll announced, activating a holographic display that showed humans in various activities. "Your species has achieved basic technology despite clear evolutionary disadvantages." The images showed humans working, playing, and living ordinary lives, but the way Doll presented them made humanity seem primitive and weak. "No natural armor," Doll pointed out. "Minimal strength, poor sensory capabilities. Yet somehow you've managed to become the dominant species on this planet." Ji-woo felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger, but she kept her face neutral. She noticed something interesting. The aliens seemed to dismiss the assistants and support staff completely, speaking freely as if they weren't even present. "The Varan Collective offers protection to developing species," Doll continued. "Your world qualifies for our assistance program." The terms appeared on screens around the room. The Varans would provide technological and medical advancements in In exchange, they would establish bases on Earth and have access to certain resources. "This is not a negotiation," Doll added when one of the human representatives began to question the terms. "This is a generous offer from a superior civilization." Ji-woo studied the aliens carefully. Their body language, while alien, suggested confidence bordering on arrogance. They truly believed humans were no threat to them. During a break in the talks, Ji-woo found herself near 2 Varan assistants. They spoke in their language, unaware or uncaring that she stood nearby. "How long will this integration phase last?" one asked. "The usual time. 6 cycles should be sufficient before we begin full resource extraction." "And the natives?" "Useful for basic labor. The rest will be processed as usual." Ji-woo kept her expression neutral as she walked away, but her heart raced. She found Taiho in a quiet corner and shared what she'd heard. "They're not here as allies," she whispered. "I think they're colonizers, or worse." Taiho nodded grimly. "I suspected as much. Did you notice how they keep referring to us as primitive, bipeds and hairless apes, when they think we aren't listening? They're so confident in their superiority that they're not even trying to hide their true intentions," Ji-woo said. The meeting resumed with Doll presenting more generous terms. That sounded increasingly like surrender documents. The aliens would have authority to establish administrative zones across Earth, with Varan law superseding human law within these areas. "This is standard procedure for species at your development level," Doll explained. "You will benefit greatly from our guidance." As the first day of talks ended, Jiwoo watched the aliens return to their ship. Their dismissive attitude toward humans was clear in every movement. "They think we're just animals," she told Taiho as they walked to their car. "Clever animals, perhaps, but not equals." "That might be their first mistake," Taiho replied. "Underestimating. An opponent is dangerous," Jiwoo nodded. "We need to learn everything we can about them, their biology, technology, weaknesses, and we need to be careful about who we trust with that information." That night, Jiwoo couldn't sleep. She reviewed the footage of the day's meetings, studying the aliens' movements and reactions. Something about their biology seemed familiar, their sensitivity to certain sounds, the way they blinked in bright light. "Every species has weaknesses," she whispered to herself, "even those with natural armor." Outside her window, the alien ship glowed against the night sky, a constant reminder that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, but their new neighbors saw them as nothing more than hairless apes, barely worth notice. Jiwoo made a promise to herself as she finally drifted to sleep. The Varans would learn that these hairless apes were far more dangerous than they appeared. 6 months had passed since the Varans arrived on Earth. Their gleaming towers now rose from cities across the globe. Jiwoo Park stared at one such building. From her apartment window, its metallic surface catching the sunset's orange glow. The aliens had kept their promise to share technology. New medical treatments cured diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Energy problems vanished with the introduction of Varan power cells. Food production increased with their advanced farming methods, but Jiwoo had noticed troubling patterns. Her phone buzzed. A message from Taiho. "Meeting tonight. Usual place. Bring your data." Jiwoo grabbed her secure tablet and headed out. She took a careful route to avoid the Varan monitoring drones that had become common in major cities. They were for public safety, the aliens claimed. The meeting location was an old bookstore basement. Taiho had swept it for listening devices earlier that day. When Jiwoo arrived, 3 people were already waiting. Taiho, Minho, the computer expert, and Suna, who worked as a translator for the Varans. "Did anyone follow you?" Taiho asked as Jiwoo entered. "No, I took the long way," she replied, placing her tablet on the table. "I have the resource extraction reports." Minho whistled as he looked at the data. "These numbers don't match what they're reporting publicly. They're taking 5 times more minerals than they claim." "And look at where they're building," Jiwoo pointed to a map showing Varan facilities worldwide. "These aren't research centers or cultural exchange buildings," Suna nodded. "I've been translating their internal communications. They don't call them administrative zones among themselves. They call them processing sectors." "Processing what?" Taiho asked. Suna's face darkened. "They never say directly, but I found educational materials in their database. Look at this." She showed them images of other worlds, at least 7 planets where the Varans had established similar presences. "What happened to the native species?" Jiwoo asked. "Some were kept as labor. Others—" Suna couldn't finish. "They're treating us like cattle," Minho said, his voice tight with anger. "All this technology they've given us, it's just to keep us docile while they set up their real operation." Jiwoo pulled up her own findings. "I've been studying their biology. They consider themselves physically superior to us in every way, but they have weaknesses. Their hearing is incredibly sensitive to certain frequencies. Their eyes can't adjust quickly to light changes. And their immune systems. They have no natural defenses against Earth bacteria. They're so confident in their superiority, they didn't even take basic precautions," Taiho noted. "That's why they wear those suits in crowded areas." "Exactly," Jiwoo said. "They see us as primitive, no threat to them. They speak freely around humans they consider unimportant. Service workers, cleaning staff, maintenance people. That's how I get most of my information," Suna confirmed. "They don't even lower their voices around me sometimes. It's like I'm not even there." "We need to warn people," Minho said. "The world governments are practically handing over control." "Some leaders are getting suspicious," Taiho replied. "But many are too dependent on Varan technology now, and some are being paid off with advanced weapons or extended lifespans." "We need proof of their true intentions," Jiwoo said. "Something concrete we can show the world." Their chance came 3 days later. Jiwoo was invited to tour a Varan medical research facility outside the city. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had earned a level of trust from the aliens who still viewed her as an interesting primitive studying her betters. This section develops cures for human diseases, her Varan guide Pak explained, as they walked through pristine white corridors. Your species has many genetic weaknesses we are helping to correct. We're very grateful, Jiwoo replied, playing her role of the awed human. May I ask what happens in that sealed area? I notice it has much higher security. That is not relevant to your work, Park answered too quickly. It contains sensitive research equipment. Jiwoo nodded, but made a mental note of the area's location. Later, when Park was distracted by a call, she placed a tiny device on a service robot, heading toward the restricted zone. That night, Jiwoo reviewed the footage captured by the device. What she saw made her physically ill. The restricted area wasn't studying human diseases, it was studying humans themselves. The facility contained rows of tanks with unconscious people floating inside, connected to machines that seemed to be extracting something from their bodies. She quickly sent the footage to her team. Within an hour, they had gathered at the bookstore. This is happening at every major Varan facility, Minho said, his face pale as he showed them a data analysis. They're not just taking Earth's mineral resources, they're harvesting biological material from humans. That's why they pushed those free health screenings so hard, Suna realized. They weren't just collecting data, they were identifying candidates. The missing persons reports have increased by 300% since they arrived, Taiho added. But the cases are being buried or explained away. Jiwoo stood up, her decision made. We need to go public with this now. I'll contact the few journalists I still trust. It's risky, Taiho warned. The Varans control most of the global communication networks now. We don't have a choice, Jiwoo replied. According to the schedule I found, they're planning to begin Phase 2 next month. They call it full biological processing. What does that mean? Minho asked. Jiwoo pulled up a final document she had stolen. Based on their previous planetary conquests, it means they'll start processing humans on a mass scale. They don't see us as partners or even as slaves. They see us as resources to be harvested. The room fell silent as the truth sank in. These advanced aliens who had arrived promising friendship and progress had been planning humanity's exploitation from the beginning. The Varans think we're just hairless apes, Jiwoo said, breaking the silence. Too primitive to fight back, too weak to resist. Then we'll show them how dangerous apes can be when cornered, Taiho replied, his eyes hard with determination. Spread the word. The resistance begins tonight. The first Varan processing center activated in a remote area of Mongolia. Within days, thousands of people disappeared inside its walls. The official story claimed they were receiving advanced medical treatments, but no one came out again. Jiwoo's evidence about the Varans' true intentions spread across secure channels, bypassing the alien-controlled media networks. At first, many refused to believe. The aliens had brought medicines and technology that seemed miraculous. How could they be enemies? Then, the processing centers began operations in more populated areas. The truth became impossible to deny. 3 months after going public with the evidence, Jiwoo found herself in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Seoul. The space had been converted into a resistance headquarters with stolen computer equipment, a makeshift living quarters for those who could no longer safely live above ground. The Varans have deployed search units in sectors 3 and 5, Taiho reported, pointing to a digital map of the city. They're looking for us, but they still think we're too primitive to be a real threat. That's our advantage, Jiwoo replied. She turned to the 30 people gathered around her, a mix of scientists, former military, and ordinary citizens who had joined the resistance. They underestimate us because they think their physical superiority makes them unbeatable. She activated a projection showing Varan biological data she had compiled. But look at what we've learned. Their hearing is incredibly sensitive to these specific frequencies. She pointed to a chart. Sounds that are merely annoying to us can cause them extreme pain. Minho, who had become their technology expert, held up a small device. I've modified these sound emitters using Varan components. They're small enough to hide but powerful enough to disable any Varan within 20 meters. And I've made progress with the bioweapon, Suna added. Now working as their medical specialist, she had been studying Varan vulnerability to Earth bacteria. It won't kill them, but exposure will make them severely ill for days, just enough time for us to sabotage their operations. Tai-Ho nodded with approval. We strike tonight. Small teams, targeted attacks. Remember, we're not trying to defeat them in direct combat. We're showing them that we're not the easy conquest they expected. That night, resistance cells across the city moved into action. Jiwoo led a team of 5 to a Varan supply depot. Using the sound devices, they neutralized the guards without firing a shot. The aliens fell to the ground, their 3 eyes wide with pain as they clutched at their hearing organs. Quickly, Jiwoo urged as they moved inside. We have 10 minutes before their systems alert others. The team placed Suna's bacterial packages in the facility's air filtration system. Within days, any Varan who entered would be exposed. Then, they downloaded crucial data from the facility's computers before disappearing back into the tunnels. Across the city, similar operations unfolded. A team led by Minho infiltrated a communications center, inserting viruses into the Varan network. Another group sabotaged transport vehicles by recalibrating their navigation systems to fail at critical moments. No humans were killed, no major destruction occurred. But the message was clear. The Hairless Apes were fighting back. The Varan response was immediate and furious. Ambassador Doll appeared on global broadcasts, his normally composed demeanor cracking with anger. These terrorist actions will not be tolerated, he announced. The criminals responsible will be found and processed immediately. All humans must report for loyalty scanning at their nearest administrative center. But the resistance had already hacked the broadcast signal. Across the world, Doll's message was interrupted by footage from inside the processing centers, showing the horrific truth of what happened to humans taken there. They see us as resources, not people, Jiwoo's voice explained over the footage. They've done this to 7 other worlds before ours. We are not the first species they've harvested, but we can be the last to fall to them. The resistance grew exponentially after the broadcast. What began as small, isolated groups became a global movement. Humans who had worked directly with the Varans began sabotaging operations from within. The aliens' own technology was turned against them in ways they never anticipated. How are these primitives doing this? Doll raged at his commanders in a meeting that the resistance had managed to bug. They have no natural advantages. They should have surrendered by now. They're adapting faster than expected, one commander replied. They're using our own systems against us in ways we never considered possible. They're animals, barely evolved apes. Doll slammed his fist on the table. Call for reinforcements. We will increase processing immediately. The Varan response grew more brutal. Entire neighborhoods were rounded up for processing when resistance activities were detected nearby, but this only strengthened human resolve and ingenuity. In their underground command center, Jiwoo and her team celebrated a major victory. They had managed to free over 1,000 people from a processing facility outside the city. Instead of trying to overpower the Varan guards, they had used the aliens' own security protocols against them, triggering a containment breach that required evacuation. They think in straight lines, Jiwoo explained to new resistance members. They expect us to either surrender or attack head-on because that's how their minds work. But humans, we think around corners. We find unexpected solutions. Tai-Ho studied reports coming in from resistance cells around the world. We're hitting them on too many fronts. They can't predict where we'll strike next because we're not following any pattern they understand, and they still think they're dealing with primitive creatures, Suna added. Their arrogance blinds them to the threat we pose. A young resistance fighter looked confused. But they are stronger than us. Their technology is more advanced. How can we possibly win? Jiwoo smiled, grimly. Because throughout human history, we've never needed to be the strongest to survive. We just needed to be the most adaptable. She pointed to the map showing resistance activities spreading across continents. And right now, we're adapting faster than they can respond. As if to prove her point, alarms suddenly blared. Minho rushed in with exciting news. "We just intercepted their communications," he announced breathlessly. "They're calling for reinforcements from their homeworld. Ambassador Doll is telling them that the situation is unexpectedly complex and that humans are showing anomalous resistance patterns." The room erupted in cheers. The mighty Varans, who had dismissed humans as weak, hairless apes, were admitting they couldn't handle the resistance alone. "They're about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating humans," Taiho said. "Reinforcements mean they're worried, and they should be." The Varan reinforcement fleet arrived in Earth's orbit 3 months after Ambassador Doll's request. 7 massive ships positioned themselves above major cities, their shadows falling across the land like giant storm clouds. General Cole, the Varan military commander, addressed Earth from his flagship. His face filled screens worldwide, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of aggression in Varan body language. "Humans," he began, his voice deep and threatening. "Your resistance is both futile and disappointing. We offered you advancement. Under our guidance, instead you choose primitive violence." From her position in the underground command center, Jiwoo watched the broadcast with the resistance leadership. The bunker had once been a military facility, now repurposed with a mix of human and stolen Varan technology. "He's scared," Jiwoo observed. "Look at how his armor plates are flaring. That's a defensive posture." "Scared? Of us?" Minho asked, surprised. "They just brought 7 warships." "Because they needed 7 warships," Taiho replied. "For what they thought would be an easy conquest." On screen, General Cole continued, "You have 2 planetary rotations to surrender your resistance leaders. After that, we begin full processing of all major population centers." When the broadcast ended, the room fell silent. The threat was clear: submit or face mass harvesting of humans. "We can't fight those ships directly," Suna said, voicing what everyone was thinking. "We don't have weapons that can touch them." "We don't need to fight them directly," Jiwoo answered. She pulled up her latest research findings. "I've been studying Varan biology more deeply. Their biggest advantage is also their greatest weakness." The screen showed detailed scans of Varan physiology. They evolved on a world with high gravity and extreme predators. Their natural armor and strength made them apex predators, but that came with costs. She highlighted specific areas of the Varan nervous system. "They never developed our endurance or temperature adaptability. Their homeworld has a stable climate. Even mild temperature changes stress their systems." "And look at their muscle structure," Taiho added, pointing to the display. "Designed for short bursts of extreme strength, but they tire quickly. They're sprinters, not marathon runners." "Exactly," Jiwoo nodded. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We can keep going long after. Other species collapse from exhaustion." Minho looked skeptical. "So we can outlast them in a race. How does that help against warships?" "Because they have to come down from those ships eventually," Jiwoo replied. "And when they do, they'll face an environment they're not adapted for, against enemies who can think in ways they can't predict." The resistance put their plan into action immediately. Rather than concentrating their forces, they spread out, establishing bases in environments the Varans found difficult: high mountains, dense jungles, freezing tundra, scorching deserts. When the Varans deployed ground forces, they discovered humans had disappeared from expected locations. Instead, resistance fighters struck from unexpected directions, using the planet itself as a weapon against the invaders. In the mountains of northern regions, Varan troops struggled with the thin air and steep terrain. Their heavy bodies, evolved for a higher gravity world, moved clumsily on Earth's mountain slopes. Human resistance fighters, accustomed to the environment, ran circles around them, setting traps and disappearing before the aliens could respond. In tropical zones, the Varans suffered in the humid heat. Their temperature regulation systems, designed for a stable climate, couldn't cope with Earth's varied conditions. Soldiers in heavy armor collapsed from heat stress, while humans in light clothing moved easily through the dense vegetation. "They're calling it the dispersal problem," Suna reported after decrypting Varan communications. "They expected us to mass our forces for traditional battles. Instead, we're everywhere and nowhere." The Varans had always conquered through overwhelming force against concentrated opposition. They had no strategy for fighting an enemy that refused to mass together, that struck in small groups and vanished, that used the environment itself as a weapon. 4 months into the reinforcement campaign, Jiwoo received exciting news from one of their undercover operatives in a Varan command center. They're rotating troops every 2 weeks now, she told the Resistance Council. Their soldiers can't handle extended deployments in Earth conditions. Their bodies break down too quickly. Tai-ho nodded in satisfaction, and each rotation means new troops who don't know the terrain, who have to learn our tactics all over again. But they're still taking people for processing, Minho pointed out. Their ships are still above our cities. Not for long, Jiwoo smiled. The same operative sent us complete schematics of their life support systems. The ships are designed for their biology, not ours. She displayed the plans on the main screen. Their air filtration systems have no protection against certain Earth microbes. They never thought they needed it. Suna leaned forward, eyes widening as she understood. We don't need to attack their ships. We just need to introduce the right microbes into their air supply. Exactly, Jiwoo confirmed. Nothing lethal, we're not killers. Just something that will make them very, very uncomfortable. The plan required precise timing and coordination. Resistance cells worldwide released specially cultivated microbes into the atmosphere at exact locations where Varan ships drew in air to refresh their systems. The microbes were harmless to humans, but caused extreme respiratory distress in Varan biology. Within days, reports came in of Varan ships experiencing environmental system failures. Alien troops were falling ill across all theaters of operation. Their coordinated attacks faltered as commanders became incapacitated. In their underground command center, Jiwoo and the resistance leadership received word of an unexpected development. We're getting signals from other alien ships entering. Killer system, Minho reported, but they're not Varan, I think they're from other species. The communication screen activated, showing a being clearly not Varan, smaller with a different body structure entirely. People of Earth, the alien began. I am Captain Lan of the Tellurian Resistance. We have monitored your fight against the Varan Collective. We too were once targeted for processing by these conquerors. We have come to offer assistance. Jiwoo stepped forward, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You're fighting the Varans too. Many worlds are, Captain Lan replied, but none have resisted as effectively as yours. The Varans called you Hairless Apes. We call you the species that fought back. For the first time since the invasion began, Jiwoo felt genuine hope. Humans weren't alone in the galaxy, and their resistance had just become part of something much larger. We have much to teach each other, she told Captain Lan, about how to fight creatures who think they're superior, just because they're stronger. And you have already taught the galaxy a valuable lesson, the alien captain replied. Physical strength is not the only kind of strength that matters. 1 year after the Varan invasion began, Jiwoo stood on the observation deck of the Tellurian. Ship, New Dawn. Earth grew smaller in the view screen as they headed toward the rendezvous point with the Galactic Council fleet. Nervous? Tai-ho asked, joining her by the window. A little, she admitted. I never imagined I'd be representing Earth before an interstellar governing body. No one better for the job, he replied. You understood the Varans before anyone else did. The journey took 3 days, during which Jiwoo and her team prepared their case against the Varan Collective. Captain Lan and other alien allies helped them understand Galactic Council protocols and procedures. The Council has existed for over 2,000 years, Captain Lan explained during one briefing. Many species work together to maintain peace across known space. The Varans have exploited legal loopholes for centuries to conduct their resource acquisition programs. Why hasn't anyone stopped them before? Suna asked. The Varans are powerful, another alien, Commander Dex of the Mavonian fleet replied. They hold key positions in Council security forces, and they choose their targets carefully, usually isolated worlds without allies. Like Earth, Minho said. Exactly, Captain Lan nodded. But you changed everything. Your resistance inspired other worlds to fight back. Now for the first time there's enough evidence and support to challenge them directly. The Galactic Council station appeared in the view screen. A massive structure shaped like a wheel, with ships of various designs docked around its circumference. As their ship approached, Jiwoo marveled at the diversity of vessels. Some were sleek and metallic like the Varan ships. Others appeared almost organic, with flowing lines and unusual materials. 57 species have representatives on the council, Captain Lan told them. Today, you may become the 58th. They docked and were escorted to preparation chambers. Jiwoo changed into formal attire provided by their allies, clothing designed to show respect for council traditions while marking them as representatives of Earth. The Varans will try to dismiss your testimony, Commander Dex warned as they walked toward the council chambers. They'll call you primitive, unworthy of council attention. Do not let them provoke you. We've dealt with their insults for a year, Taiho replied calmly. We can handle a few more. The council chamber was a vast circular room with tiered seating. Beings of all shapes and sizes filled the seats, some humanoid, others completely alien. At the center stood a raised platform where speakers could address the assembly. The Varan delegation already waited there. Ambassador Dol stood with General Cole and several other officials. Their posture was stiff, their armor plates tight against their bodies. Signs of extreme stress, Jiwoo noted. The head counselor, a tall being with iridescent skin, called the session to order. Today we address serious allegations against the Varan Collective regarding their actions on Sol 3, locally known as Earth. Ambassador Dol will speak first, followed by the Earth delegation. Dol stepped forward, his three eyes blinking rapidly. Honorable Council, the Varan Collective has followed all proper protocols in our relationship with the primitive species of Sol 3. We offered them advancement and protection, as is our right and duty under Council law. He activated a display showing early meetings with Earth leaders. They accepted our terms willingly. Later, terrorist actions by radical elements do not invalidate our legal position. Regarding allegations of processing, Dol continued, we have conducted only standard resource assessment and collection within Council guidelines for undeveloped worlds. Jiwoo listened calmly, noting how carefully Dol chose his words. He never directly denied harvesting humans, only reframed it as resource collection. When it was her turn to speak, Jiwoo approached the platform with the evidence they had gathered over the past year. She felt the eyes of countless alien species upon her. Distinguished council members, she began, her voice steady. I am Dr. Jiwoo Park of Earth. 1 year ago, the Varan Collective arrived on our world, claiming to offer friendship and advancement. In reality, they came to exploit and harvest our people. She activated her own display, showing footage from inside processing centers. This is not resource collection. This is the systematic exploitation of a sentient species. Gasps and murmurs spread through the chamber as the evidence played. Some council members turned away from the disturbing images. Earth was not the Varan's first target, Jiwoo continued, displaying evidence gathered from their alien allies. At least 7 other worlds have suffered similar fates. In each case, the Varans followed the same pattern, offering technology, while secretly preparing for mass harvesting. Ambassador Dol rose to object. These primitives have no understanding of galactic law. Their claims are based on emotional reaction, not legal principle. The evidence speaks for itself, Jiwoo replied calmly, and if I may remind the Council, the Varan Collective never registered Earth as a sentient inhabited world, despite clear evidence of our civilization. They deliberately misclassified our planet as a resource world to bypass Council protections for sentient species. This revelation caused an uproar. Such deliberate misclassification was a serious violation of Council law. As the session continued, more evidence was presented from both sides. The Varans grew increasingly defensive as their legal position crumbled. Their dismissive attitude toward primitive species began to work against them as council members from less technologically advanced worlds recognized the danger such thinking posed to them as well. After hours of testimony, the council withdrew to deliberate. Jiwoo and her team waited anxiously with their alien allies. You did well, Captain Lan told her. Even if the ruling isn't everything we hope for, you've exposed the Varan's true nature to the galaxy. The council returned sooner than expected. The head counselor's expression was grave as he addressed the chamber. The evidence presented today reveals troubling violations of our most fundamental principles, he announced. The Varan Collective has systematically exploited multiple worlds through deliberate misclassification and deception. The ruling was decisive. The Varans would be required to withdraw from Earth immediately. All processing activities would cease across all worlds. Reparations would be paid to affected species, including humans. Most significantly, the Varan Collective would be placed under council supervision for a minimum of 50 years. Furthermore, the head counselor added, we extend an invitation to Earth to join the Galactic Council as a full member, with all rights and protections that status provides. Ambassador Doll's face contorted with rage. These primitives are not worthy of council membership. They are barely out of their caves. Yet these primitives defeated your military forces, the counselor replied coldly. Perhaps the Varan Collective should reconsider what constitutes advancement. Later, as Earth's new status was being formalized, Jiwoo found Doll waiting near their ship. How? He asked, his arrogance finally broken. You had no advantages. You are physically weaker, technologically, behind us. How did Hairless Apes defeat the Varan Collective? Jiwoo considered her answer carefully. You measured strength only in physical terms, muscle, armor, weapons. You never understood that adaptation, cooperation, and determination are forms of strength too. Humans survived on Earth not because we were the strongest, but because we were the most adaptable. Remember this lesson, Ambassador, she added. The species that laughs at others often fails to see its own weaknesses. 3 months later, Earth hosted its first interstellar diplomatic conference. In Seoul, where the Varans had first landed, now stood the newly constructed Galactic Embassy. Representatives from 27 species attended, eager to establish relations with the world that had shown it was possible to defeat the previously unstoppable Varan Collective. As Jiwoo looked out over the gathering, she felt a profound sense of pride. Humans, once dismissed as hairless apes, now stood as equals among the stars, not because they were the strongest or most advanced, but because they had refused to accept the limitations others tried to place on them. Not bad for a bunch of primitives, Taiho said, joining her on the observation platform. Jiwoo smiled. I think we've earned the right to be called something else now. What's that? The species that fought back.